Hi, and welcome back to the North Lodge Cottage Garden. A shrub rose up for you next, introduced by David Austin Roses in 2020. And if I'm honest, I am absolutely smitten with this rose. A top tip from myself, you can expect to see this one climbing well up into my top 20 highly recommended David Austin Roses this year when that list is reworked. This beautiful thing is Silas Marner. Introduced and bred by David Austin Roses in 2020, it is absolutely stunning. I'm going to have to disagree with David Austin Roses on their description of this particular rose. They're saying that this is an unfussy pink rose, and I could not disagree with their statement more. This rose is fussy in all of the best and most important ways, meaning it is absolutely enchanting and absolutely stunning. A very large bush reaching around 4.5 feet tall and around 4.5 feet wide. It has fairly arching, wide spreading growth, and you can see I've left this on, although this looks a bit strange, I've left this new leader on to give you a little bit of an impression about just how fast the repeat is on Silas Marner. It is never out of flower from the middle part of June all the way through to the back end of the year. In fact, one of the biggest shows that it put on for me last year was actually right at the very end of the season, at the end of September and the beginning of October, when it was absolutely dripping with blooms. Now, I don't know whether that was a benefit of the cooler temperatures and the plant was actually sort of allowed to give itself a little bit more oomph, but the blooms were much larger, and that show was absolutely phenomenal to end the season. And encrusted with morning dew, it was absolutely beautiful, just that lovely sense of whimsy and fairy tale, that lovely cottage garden feel with these beautiful ruched edges to the flower. The growth, as I say, is fairly upright and fairly spreading. You can expect the bush to form something that's actually really quite square in its growth habit. As I say, around 4.5 feet by 4.5 feet, it is a large shrub, so you're going to have to give it some space. But I cannot find any negative points with growing this rose whatsoever, and I am utterly smitten, and I'm going to tell you all the reasons why I have simply fallen in love with this beautiful rose. Not only is it the most enchanting, soft, delicate pink colour, it has really lovely flame burgundy red growth tips, which together, combined with the olive green foliage, bring the whole plant together to the most really pleasing and attractive look. The repeat, as I mentioned earlier, is very strong, never out of flower, and you can see the repeat already coming on this stem here. So these blooms, as I say, it looks a bit strange, but I've left these blooms on. These are the blooms that are currently in flower. You've then got this one here, which is another 4 or 5 buds, and already this enormously strong leader coming up alongside, bringing another round of flowers in a couple of weeks' time. So it really is very vigorous and very healthy. Last year and the year before, it didn't suffer with anything whatsoever. It marched its way through 2020 and 2021 with absolutely no issues whatsoever. You know, fending off black spot, fending off mold and mildew, the aphids left it alone. So a very healthy, reliable, strong rose, which is going to work really hard. But the most enchanting features about this for me, I'm just going to get my secateurs and I'm just going to take this leader off. Try not to cut myself live on camera, but I'm just going to cut that leader off so you can actually see these blooms. They are utterly enchanting. Fairly large. At the moment, they're only going to reach around 3.5 to 4 inches across, but at the back end of the season, let's say last year, they reached something a lot larger than that, 4.5, maybe even 5 inches across. A really large, heavy, goblet-shaped flower, which was really very attractive. Now, say David Austin say this is unfussy, but I think it's very fussy and I think it's very beautiful. I love this beautiful ruched edge to the edge of the flowers, which gives it this lovely sort of very deep textured look to it. I say covered in dew in the early morning sun, this is very pretty indeed. The buds open to a cone-shaped flower. If you are growing things like the Wedgwood rose, you'll be familiar with this particular form. However, this one doesn't ball up quite so badly as the Wedgwood rose. a soft true pink rose with a very delicate lime green eye. The flowers are born in, as I say, look at these huge clusters, 2 or 3, actually that's 4 in this first flush of flowers, then you've got another 5 or 6 coming, and then the buds on this one that I've just cut off, another 6 or 7 rose buds coming on here. So you can see a succession of flowers working their way through continuously on Silas Marner, making it a really good rose for growing in the garden. A little bit large, I think, for growing in a pot, unless you're going to put it in something about the size of a half barrel, but it's very, very beautiful. And I say, I love the combination between this beautiful soft true pink, the dark olive green foliage, and these burgundy red tips is really quite enchanting. The biggest plus point for me, if you're looking for all the romance of an English rose with lots and lots of fragrance, something that you can cut and bring into the house. Now, I haven't actually seen what the performance of this one is in the house. These are going to be cut now and kept at normal room temperature. And as I say, I'll be formulating my list of the roses that I believe are best for you to be cutting and bringing into the house. But this one has an amazing fragrance, to the point yesterday when I cut this, I was like, oh my goodness. It's rich and it's very, very fruity. It's smelling of those really, really high summer fruits, very distinctive. Talking about blackcurrant and green apple, damsons and plums, and even sort of hints of apricot. It really is absolutely stunning. So a later introduction from David Austin Roses, snuck in 2020, just before the lockdowns and everything, which is probably why this rose is not yet incredibly popular. But Silas Marner from David Austin Roses, introduced in 2020, I cannot find any problems with this rose whatsoever. In fact, it's a plus, a plus, a plus. It's 10s, 10s, 10s across the board from me. I'm rating this rose really highly, and I really suggest that if you can, find this rose and add it to your David Austin Rose collection. It is stunning. Fragrance, colour, foliage and colour contrast, growth habit, it's a win-win for me. So this is Silas Marner from David Austin Roses.